You happy with everything? Yeah. Super. Can someone shut that, please? Is that okay? Sorry. And the window, that's okay too.
Raf, can you get the window?
Raf, can you get the window?
Oh, yeah.
Right, and I will crack straight on. So, welcome everybody to a new On the Table podcast. My name is MT, and what we do on this podcast is we bring people, Christians with different opinions together to discuss matters that are going to be on the table. The aim of this podcast is not to get Christians to think about Christian things or to talk about Christian things, but to really consider how we put all the Christian things we believe into action. So we want to answer questions and take all the theological truths we hold evident and actually ask ourselves, well, how do they actually translate into real world behavior? So before we crack on the table you have me, MT Omoniyi. I am a young Christian living in Manchester, working in the business world, but also in politics. Super passionate about a lot of different things. But yeah, that's it from me.
And I am Luke, and I'm also young and a Christian. I hope I can still fall into that category. And I was at the University of Manchester. I did my master's there a couple of years ago, and now I've finished and I've got a job in the working world. And yeah, I'll echo Mike's statement, really passionate about all sorts of politics and really interested in how politics and Christianity sort of coincide.
Okay, hi guys. Guys, there's no one here. Have it. My name is Sewa. I am a Christian as well, a youngish Christian. I about to start my master's at the University of Manchester.
Superb.
Going into cancer research, so I'm a bit of a scientist. I feel like when I have my final degree, I'll be a scientist officially. But yeah, passionate about culture, passionate about policies as well, especially in higher education. So I've got a bit of a role into that as well. And interested about today.
So yeah, hi guys, my name's David. I'm a second year student at the University of Manchester, studying economics and politics. Like everyone here, I have an interest in politics and specifically policy. Yeah, I'm looking forward today. I'm a Christian. I'm the youngest here, so.
How'd you know that? How'd you know?
I'm pretty sure I'm the youngest here. So I'm looking.
Looking around the table, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to today.
Super. That's all good. Well, before we crack into the topic, it is a very interesting one. I mean, the title probably got people going, But we have to play a game first. And here's the truth, folks. There's a leaderboard. And every single episode, the group of people who are taking part get a chance to see what they can do. So I'll tell you the game really quickly. I'll pop this here. The game is Cahoots. Is that what it's called? Taboo, right? So yeah, whatever. Taboo. Okay. And what you have to do is you have a minute. So you're next to me, Luke. You can do this. Essentially, I'm going to show you my laptop. It has a number of different cards, and you have to explain what they are, as many as you can in 1 minute. But you can't use the words that are on the thing, right? So Esther and David will guess. I'll tell you the score so far. Oh, sorry, Sewa and David will guess. The scores so far have been 3. So I think we have a chance here to beat everybody. So Luke, you ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. You have a minute.
Here you are. You can't use any other words there.
Which,
3.
am I this one?
You're starting from here. You can do any of them you want.
Okay.
So do as many as you can in 1 minute, yeah?
Oh, okay.
Try to be excited, I'm joking. Here we go.
It looks difficult.
2, 1, go.
I can't do that one. Something that happens when God interacts with the world, and it's really amazing.
Miracles?
Yeah.
Miracles.
Which one do I want?
Come on, Luke.
Can I help?
I can't do that without using that word.
How much time?
Yeah, so if you're going out into the world as a Christian, and one of the things that God said to us that we must do, there was 10 of them.
10 commandments.
Yeah. It was an animal in the garden. I said
Serpent.
what's going to happen to us when we die. We're going to get
resurrected.
something from...
I'm sorry. So time's up. I am not happy whatsoever.
I got what?
Sorry,
3.
guys.
That's all right. It's okay. I do think there's a couple you could have. Come on, you could have.
Potentially.
You could have done cross.
Did you see the words that you're not allowed to say?
Okay, so with cross, what did it say? You can't say Calvary, Jesus died, crucified on nail. What are you meant to say then?
Exactly. what can I say?
The thing that
He was
our
hung
Savior hung on.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, something like that. Anyways,
Yeah.
okay, there we go. Well, that was
How many
fun.
did we get?
I thought we got 3.
Oh,
Oh,
wasn't that
gosh.
bad then?
I'm sure that was 4.
I think we got 4.
Oh, because he said,
That
he
was
said
better
a
than last
word.
time.
This sucks. Sorry. We need to do better, folks. So maybe next time.
Okay.
Well, let's
Apologies.
jump into the discussion. Obviously, the title of this episode is "Help, My Friend's a Trump Supporter."
Is that actually it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
So let's pretend a concerned person sent that in.
Okay.
Let's just get straight into it. Should he be worried? Should she be worried? How do you speak to them? Let's just go for it.
Wow. Are they Christian?
Yes.
And why are they worried?
I don't know. They haven't.
Okay.
We can send them an email back.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they reply.
I would
in
ask
time
the question
for this,
back. Who do you support, and what makes you think that as a Christian that the person that you're supporting is better than Trump is what I'd say, and then depending on their answer back, I would then go from there. But if it's Joe Biden, for example, you could probably make just as good arguments against Joe Biden from a Christian perspective as you can against Donald Trump, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, for me, I would say, what's the main reason for supporting Trump? How big a supporter are you of Trump? You can support him for one thing, but not necessarily like support him for other things. So for me, I'll say, what's the main reason they support Trump? Why? So what's the magnitude of the support for Trump?
Sorry, I'm just looking like interested. I think I would initially not so much panic. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I think as kind of everyone has just said, I would just want to understand. Okay, you support Trump. Why? Same as anyone else. So why do you support Trump? What are his policies? Because a lot of times we assume that people that are supporting Trump are racist. We'll just say they're racist, or they only support Trump because of certain specific reasons. But I would just want to find out, okay, why exactly do they support Trump? What are the reasons behind it? And it's okay as well. It's not a taboo thing that they can't support Trump, and I should be sort of worried per se about it.
I think one of the major kind of issues just off the bat, and I think about it here, one of the reasons why this is probably even a topic is because obviously supporting Trump has become something of a dog whistle, if you like, right? We know the Proud Boys, which is this far-right neo-Nazi organization, supports Trump. We've heard about other kind of far-right, questionable figures who support Trump. So I guess what the person may be thinking is, okay, if I have a best friend who also supports Trump, are they aligning themselves with all these problematic people who support Trump as well? Are we sharing our support for a problematic figure? Maybe if I was to get into the mind of that person, maybe that's what they're thinking. What would you say about? I mean, what would you do if your best friend was like, "I love Donald Trump,"
I think as Christians, it's hard to love any politicians. What I'd say, I think if we were relying on politicians, and that's any Democrat, Republican politicians to solve our problems, then we're not looking in the right place. So I'd pick up the word love and question that, but I wouldn't have an issue if a Christian would come to me and say, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, in the same way that if they came to me and said, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. As long as they could justify that from a Christian perspective, I think we need to acknowledge that Christians are going to have different political views. And although our politics should be informed by our faith, and vice versa, in fact, no, not vice versa. Not vice versa. Not vice versa. Although our politics should be informed by our faith, we need to acknowledge that people are different and they're built differently and they have different inbuilt values. And just because you share a faith with someone doesn't mean that you're going to share the same political views.
For me, I would say if somebody's political views, like if they completely oppose mine, I would probably just ignore the conversation. If that was my best friend, I'd just stay away from that conversation. But then from time to time, I'll test things out. I'll say, you've seen how Trump he had the inability to denounce white supremacy. What are your thoughts on this? What are your views on this? Do you feel the same way I do regarding this? Then from then I'll make a decision as to how I progress.
Progress in a friendship, sorry, or
that's the thing. I wouldn't want to lose a friendship over something like this. But
do you think you could though? Do you think you could start being friends with somebody over who they support politically?
That's a good question, because if I was to put that in terms of a relationship, I think I could end it over something.
As a
romantic relationship.
Okay.
But and because I can't really avoid that. But in like a friendship, I feel that we could just not touch on that conversation.
That's so interesting. So obviously we're using the US context here. If we bring to the UK a bit, what's your political, what do you call it, affiliation? Feel free if you don't want to say it. You're thinking, I'm looking for a job when I graduate, right? But I'll be interested, like if you're left wing, whatever, it's your Labour Party supporter, are you saying you couldn't marry a right wing person? Would that be a deal breaker for you?
Not extreme right, obviously, but but yeah.
What about extreme left?
No, not extreme left either.
Right.
So I wouldn't go for the extreme sides, but I would definitely marry someone who votes for Conservative, because there are definitely good reasons to vote for Conservative.
Yeah.
As well as good reasons to vote for the left wing as well.
Yeah, I guess what I would say regarding that is that we can't. I guess from my perspective as a Christian, I can't really sort of say I am a Conservative for life or I'm a Labour for life, because that can change per leader that's running or per policy that they're putting in place. I think I kind of separate myself from the leader. I can see the leader and say, okay, you are what Trump is, and kind of separate him from his policies, and vice versa to, if we're bringing that to the UK, to the Labour Party. And I guess that's the thing that's a bit tricky, because I know a lot of people can't see the leader apart from, okay, if I see that you as a leader are this kind of person, then I think all your policies are the same, and I can't vote for you just based on your character.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many ways we could go in this conversation.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out how do we. I think we're all kind of like, it's like there's a pool. Everyone's like just around the pool, but we haven't dived in yet.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how we do that.
You want to dive into the pool?
I guess
let's get in the pool. Can you swim? It's the first question.
that's no, I can't. I'll be drowning.
So let's do it. So from an economics perspective, I'm right wing. I don't affiliate with any political party, Conservatives, Labour. I think they're all rubbish. I think historically they've all failed us. But I am right wing. So from a policy point of view, I'm more in line with Trump, far more in line with Trump and what he's doing at the moment than I am with Biden. And I think that's one of the key things when you think about as Christians. Okay, how are we judging these people who we're voting for? Are we judging them on their policy? Regardless of whether we believe that they truly believe in the policies that they're doing. A good example might be abortion. I don't think Trump is pro-life, although he has enacted pro-life policies. So as a Christian, am I then inclined to vote for him even if I don't believe that he believes that properly? Or are we viewing these politicians more on their personality and how they come across? Clearly, there's a lot of issues with Trump, his personality. As far as I'm aware, he's probably cheated on all his ex-wives.
His ex-wives?
For a reason.
Yeah. So clearly there's moral things that we can look at the person and say, well, he said things that we would disagree with as a Christian. He said things against women that we disagree with. So are we judging them on that rather than their policy?
Can I ask you a question then?
Yeah.
So, and this is obviously me jumping into the pool. I don't think I'm as I'm right wing or left wing yet. However, say take Trump and take abortion, and even even the UK context. So, what's more important to you? Which is something that gets me going. So you've got Trump, and David, you just said Trump struggled to denounce white supremacy. In fact, when he was given the opportunity to denounce white supremacy, that's the first time we see him stuttering. Hold on. Just let me say this. So he's able to denounce white supremacy, right? some Christians saw that and they said, that's bad. He should have denounced it emphatically, right? But they go, but his abortion platform,
Right.
for me, that's more important than the fact that he couldn't denounce white supremacy.
Yeah.
So when you take the fact that America is going through this cultural moment right now, there's rethinking its history as it pertains to racism and stuff like that. How is it that some Christian Republicans, whatever you're going to call them, what they call evangelicals in America, how is it that they can squint and kind of close their eyes a bit when he's not denouncing white supremacy, where he's saying all sorts of stuff, when he took out a full-page spread back in the days in the New York Times to call for the death penalty for 4 black boys that were then exonerated, but he said they should face the death penalty, saying that they're all criminals. Now, how can we squint our eyes towards that and then say it's my Christian faith that leads me to affirm his stance on abortion? Isn't that a bit double-minded, especially when you consider that people, those Republicans I'm talking about, they're very, very proud of saying that. I mean, I even saw one of them on Fox saying any Christian should vote for Trump. I just thought, this is right. I mean, what do you say to that?
Yeah, I'd disagree with that statement. Any Christian should vote for Trump, in the same way that I disagree with the statement any Christian should vote for Joe Biden. Going back to the point I made before, but just on the white supremacy point, I think it's a non-starter, this conversation. As far as I'm aware, I've heard Trump denounce white supremacy dozens of times. I think he's denounced white supremacy more than any other president in recent history. I think he gets hacked off at the media continually asking him about it. And I agree, he should come out and just and get it out of the way and just denounce it again. Although he has denounced it many times, we can all look at that on YouTube. And I get bored of people saying we need to denounce white supremacy when he's denied it. He has denied it multiple times.
But it's on a national stage, though. Don't you think it's a bit different? Because he was on doing this big debate. Everyone's watching. Like when people are watching, that's typically when it counts. You denouncing white supremacy at some low grade rally where it's not going to cost you politically, versus when you know that there's a massive cleavage of people. These Proud Boys, they're called, right? They're all watching. Everyone's watching. The whole country's watching. That's when you're like, stand back and stand. What do you say? Stand back and stand by. I thought, hold on. Why is it now you're stuttering?
Did you watch the debate? Yeah.
What's the whole thing? Yeah.
So he was asked. I don't know the exact quote, but he said, "Do you denounce white supremacy?" And he said, "Sure." And he was asked again. I agree. It's not. You want him to come out and say, "I denounce all white supremacists. It's evil." You want him to come out and say that. He didn't say that. He comes out and says, "Sure, I denounce them, sure." And then he just goes on and talks about someone else. I don't know what he was talking about with the whole Proud Boys quote. I don't really know anything about that group, to be honest.
They're a neo-Nazi far-right group. They're well-known because they're always online. But away from Trump, like, my main thing is, are we picking, and how do we, honestly pick what's the most important thing to us? Because it seems as though American evangelicals, particularly, abortion is by far systemic racism. No clue.
Yeah.
Even some pastors. I don't want to say any names, but even some pastors. When I heard their message in church about Black Lives Matter, it was so sad. Because I said, on everything else, you've done your research, you know the fact, you take us through history, you give us this. But when it comes to, say, Black Lives, we need law and order. I'm like, really? That's all you've got to say?
So just quickly, just to answer it, because I agree I didn't answer your question before, about Christians. They're very quick to support Trump because of the pro-abortion stances. I think if we're going purely from policy, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking about this as like a Christian utilitarian way. And what I mean by that is, okay, Trump's good in a Christian way because of abortion, and he's bad in a Christian way because he doesn't denounce white supremacy fast enough or whatever. And then you've got on the other side Joe Biden, and we can pick apart these people and say, well, that policy is pro-Christian and that policy is anti-Christian. I don't think it's a particularly productive way of doing things. I think as a Christian, you'd struggle if you wanted to vote for either one of these candidates with a heart saying this candidate represents me and they are representative of Jesus, obviously not Jesus, but representative of Jesus.
Not going to get that from
and his values, and they represent my Christian views. You're not going to be able to vote for anyone. So it's up to that Christian. Do they then not vote for anyone, or do they say, actually, this guy is slightly worse or better than the other guy?
Yeah.
So are you saying that when voting we have to make some concessions, or we have to admit that some concessions have to be made?
Well, I'd say always as a Christian, because
okay.
I don't think as a Christian your values or your worldview should directly fall in line with any political party or any political movement.
Yeah.
And if it does, I think that's a question that you should ask yourself, well, why does it? Because it doesn't matter whether it's Republicans, Democrats, feminism, Black Lives Matter, they've all got things that are probably in line with the Christian worldview and against it.
Yeah.
So
would you suggest not voting?
If I was an American right now, I would struggle from a Christian perspective. If I'm being honest, I would probably vote for the Libertarian candidate, Joe Jordanson.
Sorry, who's that? I'm joking. I know him, but
Yeah.
obviously
I actually didn't know who that is.
What, he's running?
Her.
Oh, her. Sorry.
Wow.
She gets no airtime. Sorry.
So yeah, that's what I'd do.
So
Because
you basically waste your vote, pretty much, right?
you could define it as that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in a lot of your American states anyway, you'd be wasting your vote.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think regarding your question and sort of the ranking of quote unquote reasons why people choose to vote either Trump or Joe Biden, I think a lot of times when we talk about, let's say, racism, for example, the reason why a lot of churches don't see it as a sin. It's just it's a heart issue. Most people would say it's just not a heart issue. It's a sin issue. But at times it's because we don't see it as equal as abortion. We don't see it as, because there's not a law that says directly or a commandment that says don't
Thou shalt not be racist.
thou shalt not be racist, exactly.
Right.
And because of that, so you can see people quote thou shalt not murder all the time. I've seen a lot. I think definitely this election has just really showed me how completely divided Christian is in America, because I just think, wow, these are sort of your brothers and sisters, but because of abortion, like the quote that that sort of pastor made, that if you're a Christian, you should vote for Trump, based on that quote about if you're as a Christian, you have to be pro-life. So if you don't vote for the pro-life candidate, then that means you're no longer a Christian. I think ultimately this is probably where sort of Christian liberty comes in place, that you have the freedom and autonomy to choose who you align with, and it might be different. You might abortion might be something that's like, okay, this is my deal breaker. Whichever party, regardless of what they stand for, regardless of what the character of the person is, whichever party has the most favorable policies that prevent abortion, I would vote for that. And that could be different for someone else. For someone else, it could be about racism. It could be about something else. But we can't just decide and say you have to select this part or that part as a Christian. I think that's what we tend to do.
It's that dogma, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that, like, this is the issue that you have to align here on. And it's so interesting to me. Listen, I'm not a race baiter. I don't think I am anyways. But I only bring up race because this is what's really showed me just how fractured some of the men, white men to be quite frank, that I looked up to in America, just how flawed they were. Because on this one issue, suddenly I saw them kind of like, I'd rather just move on.
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
yeah,
but why don't you talk about everything else, literally. There's one pastor I know that he talks so much about gay marriage and trans issues, so much. And when BLM happened, he gave one sermon where he was like, we need to respect law and order. And I was like, are you being serious? That's all you've got to say. Nothing about racism, nothing about the sin of racism, nothing about prejudice. It's like, no, it's just law and order. God puts order there to restrain. I'm thinking, really? That's all you've got to say? No. But this brings us to this question about how, just to move away from America for a minute, like how faith shapes our political views, even here in the UK. Because in the last election, you had Jeremy Corbyn, who quite frankly was an open socialist. Let's be quite frank, he's been a socialist for the past 27 years or so. I mean, socialism and Christianity, I don't think are compatible. I don't think they're the same thing.
Agreed.
But I'm just wondering, like, how then has socialism shaped, socialism?
Not socialism.
Let's be glad it's not.
How has Christianity shaped our kind of genuine political views, whether we're right wing? You said you were right wing before. David, I wonder, are you right wing? Sewa, are you right wing? Like, how does the Bible shape who you vote for, even in the UK?
Come on, guys, get your views on this. You told me to jump into the water. I've jumped in.
I feel like it's quite tricky because I think initially sort of getting into just getting my head around politics, it can obviously be quite overwhelming, especially when you feel like you have to sort of select a side as a Christian. I think for me, my faith is just really... This sounds like such a cop-out.
I just pray for them. Is that what you're going to say?
Something close. But no. I think... because I think I started on the side of just, as you say, just pray for them. It's fine. It doesn't matter what we vote for. It's okay. God's will be done. But ultimately, we still have to engage in discussions about politics because it affects everything. It affects whether or not you can send your child to this kind of school based on what the reforms that's going on in education. It affects everything. And I think for me, I really just try to not be very... Not the phrase identity politics, just vote for the sake of, everyone's voting for this, I need to vote for this. I really try to sort of read the policies, read and try and understand what exactly are they trying to implement and what does this mean as well for the Christian faith. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes you think, okay, for me, it's fine, this benefits me, but completely, how does this item move forward God's kingdom? How does this progress God's kingdom? And that's difficult because sometimes it's not the sort of vote that would go with the majority at times with conflicts and views to families, conflicts and views to friends, and I really find that quite difficult to be frank.
Me personally, before I didn't really want to mix the two because it would just be too difficult to see one's policies, how it goes with Christianity. But now I've tackled it and I've seen that from my perspective is that it's a thing where
I love the setup. You're like, I've sorted it out, and here's how it works. I'm like, yeah, go for it.
For me now is a thing where, for instance, given to the poor, for instance, which party would go towards that, given to poor people in the country, whose policies favour them poor people in the country. So things like that, I would say that's how my faith influences politics right now. So I think you can't really. So for instance, the issue of gay marriage, for instance, whichever party you vote for is going. The whole country is for gay marriage right now. So it's a thing where I don't think you can really tackle that with your voting. For me personally,
So your vote would be largely dependent on who you think would help the poor more, presumably.
That's one aspect I would look at.
Okay. So who would that be, do you think, in this country? Just to put you on the spot, if you don't mind. It's fine.
Well, I would say Labour over Conservatives because, as you said before, the vote that counts probably be Labour or Conservative. So with that, in that department, it will be Labour over Conservative.
Okay.
Right, that's... So you're in the pool as well now? There's two people in the pool. This is actually really, really interesting, I find, because I'm so glad you said what you said, which is that, you know, I haven't heard someone articulate that the major thing for you is, like, poverty. Like, poverty. It's just that dogma that's, I guess, the issue. And I guess the reason why it's really difficult is because it's this whole thing of, we're talking about today in Heads Up, the Bible study we do, about prophetic distance and prophetic witness, and how to have an effective prophetic witness, you need to maintain a certain prophetic distance. You need to be somewhat, you know, removed from issues to be able to speak to them. If you're on there, you know, marching to every political movement, as it were, then it can be quite difficult sometimes to still maintain your Christian perspective. Case in point, Black Lives Matter. I mean, we got to talk about it, don't we?
Right, yeah.
Because just a few weeks ago, it came out that, you know, we saw a video of their leaders. These are the leaders of the organization saying that they actually practice witchcraft, and that every time we say BLM or every time we put the hashtag on Twitter, they were saying that they've put spells out or something. And I still think about, you know, Boyle and Trouble, or that kind of hocus pocus stuff. Yeah, that was a good film. Yeah, it was a banging movie. I can't lie. I wouldn't recommend it now, you know, but it was a banging movie. But they were saying that every time we say BLM, that we are vessels that they're using to channel dead spirits, and I was just like, oh gosh. Now, you might be thinking this is shocking. Well, so is their website, because on their website they've also said all sorts of stuff about their desire to destabilize the nuclear family around the world in Western democracies. They've spoke about affirming trans, and not about, and people say stuff like, oh, so you say you don't affirm trans. It's not about affirming trans. It's about the ideology versus the people. Of course, we would support the people, support anybody, but the notion that it's a worldview that I agree with and I think ought to be purported. I think these things are clearly antithetical to the Christian doctrine, right? So how then do you engage with a movement like Black Lives Matter as a Christian, knowing that the organization, I'm not gonna even go down is the organization Christian? It's clearly anti-Christian, right? But how do you engage with it?
I agree. It's anti-Christian, and from a Christian perspective, I think one should be able to differentiate between the statement Black Lives Matter, because clearly as a Christian, Black lives do matter, Black lives should matter, all lives matter. Oh no, I've committed the mortal sin.
I was waiting for that.
So I've just...
I'm so sorry. I think it's the fact that I know you probably thought, I shouldn't say this, but somehow...
In our 21st century Western point of view, I've just committed a mortal sin.
We like you, Luke.
Well, no. As in, God created man and he created women and he created everyone to be equal. So in that sense, Black Lives Matter. I won't say it again. So, but we need to just be able to say that and it not be related to the organisation.
The difficulty is, what they say is every time you're saying it, whether you know or you don't know, you're helping the organization grow because more people are knowing about the organization. Yeah. In fact, you told us off air that they actually took their beliefs off their webpage. I reckon, and I might be wrong, but just the theory is maybe they did that because way more people are checking it out now.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly.
Because I'm tweeting Black Lives Matter, because Sewa's tweeting, because we're all tweeting Black Lives Matter. So do you think we should just stop using the phrase? And I'm looking at, everybody here, because when we say it, even if we don't mean it, they're getting popularity.
See, that's the thing. So I don't think it's just the phrase. That's because you can tweet anything to say you're supporting Black lives. I've seen people add all Black Lives Matter just to distinguish them a little bit. Or all lives. Okay, I'm not saying that.
All lives do matter.
But yes. I mean, of course, all lives do matter. And as you said before, we can obviously separate the statement from the organisation. I don't know how much I hold firmly to the stance of by me tweeting all Black Lives Matter, that means I'm invoking spirits and stuff, because my God, it's stronger than that. It's not just about that. So I think you can still say the statement Black Lives Matter, and that's separate. If you're sort of expanding on that, because I think people just say Black Lives Matter, and then people just start tweeting all lives. It just becomes like a here and there, and it's just this. It's a buzzword now. Okay, Black Lives Matter. What do you mean by that? Expand on that, so it just doesn't it doesn't stay as this phrase that you just say and just leave it. It's not, you don't just say the phrase and then you don't do anything to help the Black Lives Matter movement, not the organization itself. But I think, I don't feel that because I'm tweeting Black Lives Matter, I am contributing to the organization. I think I can clearly distinguish them as separate in my head, and how I sort of expand and speak to people about the movement. It's not tied to the organization at all.
Well, someone might say, to probe you, someone might say, okay, cool, you can do that in your head. But in reality, you're still just saying Black Lives Matter, which is still helping them spread.
But anything you say about Black Lives Matter...
I don't think anything you say is linked to a witchcraft organization, though. So you could say, I support Black Lives instead. Yeah. You could say... hashtag, raise.
But this is just all semantics.
No, but I know, but that's what they're saying is their argument, if I'm getting it correctly, is they've deliberately crafted a certain message that they know will be palatable to most Black people, with the hidden and nefarious intent that by you saying that, you would help them usher their world movement into being, as it were.
Right.
So that's what it is that's why they've done it that way. I'm not suggesting that you stop saying it at all. I'm just putting out there that that's what they're saying, is that we've deliberately crafted a palatable message that you'd be foolish to not affirm.
Yeah.
But really, latent in that is this desire we have to push forward this worldview that we know is like demonic. And as a Christian, so I know some Christians who don't say the term anymore. They're like, never. I'm just wondering how you guys navigate. I know it's a tough question. I know it's always like, I've got a gun to your head or something. But
No, it's a really good, really good. Because I think even, obviously, on surface level, everyone talks about the organization. Everyone talks about the concept of Black Lives Matter. Do my ties hold strong to the phrase? Of course not. If it's more news or more things, quote unquote, are really revealed, or it just seems like this is just this agenda that I need to sort of distance myself from, then that's fine. I can say I support Black people. I like Black people. I support all lives.
Getting close.
But it's true.
That's hate speech.
But ultimately, it's not like my ties aren't specifically to the phrase itself. I mean, there are obviously problems with the organization and how they sort of create this identity of you being Black, and that's, I guess, a different conversation for another day. But yeah, I'm not sort of tied to the phrase, and I can sort of separate myself from it if I need to.
Previously, I would have thought, let's not concede to this hashtag. Let's still be able to use this hashtag. But now, I'm saying, nothing hurts with trying to make a new hashtag. Also, but if
it doesn't have the same effect.
If you have a new hashtag, also include other stuff that are not linked to the previous organization, to the Black Lives Matter organization. Maybe initiatives you could support. Maybe GoFundMes you could support that are not associated to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, I've seen some Black American political commentators talk about this issue and make this sort of claim that I will never come out there and say the word Black Lives Matter. I don't think they support all Black lives. So I've seen one actually that says all Black Lives Matter as like a new hashtag. Okay. And I think their point that they were probably trying to make there is Black Lives Matter concentrates on a very small specific issue with white policemen and killing Black people. Yeah. But there are lots of other problems going on in America with Black people dying in certain ways, like for example Black on Black crime, where a lot of people sadly are dying every week, and the point there was saying let's make a new hashtag that encompasses all Black lives, and try and separate ourselves from this Black Lives Matter movement that only concentrates on one small segment of the problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think if there's one thing we've uncovered is that when we all say things, we can mean lots of other things. Because when I speak about Black Lives Matter, I certainly am not talking about police brutality. I've never. That's not all I'm talking about. Yeah. Because I looked at the numbers, looked at the stats. I'm far more interested in Black lives, full stop. Right. And I think one of my personal view on this is, it's the age-old thing. It's how systems stay the way they are. Systems redirect your energy and attention. Rather than solving the actual issue, we get into the semantical debate, which is what Sewa was saying, debating what phrase we ought to use, when in reality the problem is still there. And the problem is about equity, it's about equality, it's about compassion. I think some Christians have a very shallow definition of compassion. It's very convenient. Yeah. It lifts up their certain, cleavage, people who share irredeemable qualities with themselves. It lifts them up at the cost of other people. And people like that kind of compassion, right? A compassion that has to see you recognize your inherent privileges is a very different type of compassion to make peace with. And I think generally, not just away from even racial issues, I think this is the big problem in general, is that some Christians think by virtue of being saved, like they're free from every single prejudicial, problematic view or thing they harbor. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. My interest now is not so much how do I get into the semantics, but how do we now actually navigate these complex political issues, social justice issues, moving forward. So as we wrap up, I would love to get like a thought from you guys. Like, how do you, so I know it's super hard again, I'm gonna ask you another hard question, is how do you sleep at night?
It's not going well. Back to the original question.
But how do you know what's funny about Trump? I actually like him. Like, I think he's really funny. Like, as in
he's hilarious.
He's hilarious. Objectively hilarious. Like, just the level of just nonsense that comes out of his mouth.
His
You
actions.
just have to be like, this is funny, right?
Be real.
However, obviously, he's also very dangerous, right? But and he threatens security and democracy in America. But away from that, how do you guys sleep at night when you've made certain decisions to vote certain ways, to support certain people, knowing that? So with Joe Biden, okay, cool. He's nice, he's old, he's empathetic. But some of his beliefs and policies are very, very problematic, especially for Christians. Right? But Trump as well, as you said, like, yes, he's nice. Maybe he is like calling Christians up and having phone calls with them. But we all know he's using Christians. I mean, this is a man.
100%.
This is a man.
The
That,
Bible.
The Bible
this is a man when they
verse.
asked him, "What's your favorite Bible verse?" Remember what he said? He was like, "All of them." I said, "Come on, bro."
Yeah.
remember
And
that.
by the way, Christians, I don't think Christians should fall for it when he holds the Bible up
when he holds it.
and
Yeah.
uses the Bible. Like, we've got to be above that, and we've got to see through it.
So how do you do it then? How do you have peace when you've made certain decisions, knowing that this might not be? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
As a closing kind of remark.
Wow, that's a tough question. That wasn't the question I was expecting you to ask me.
But what are we looking forward to in the elections?
I think one of the best books I read recently was a book by Jonathan Haidt called "Why Good People Are Separated by Politics and Religion," and it basically talks about how we have we think we make choices based on objective truths and realities. We're rational creatures, and that's why we've decided to vote a certain way. But actually, as a Christian, I believe that God's created, and this book affirms that, by the way. The book shows, and as a Christian, I believe that God's created us different on purpose, with different underpinning value structures. So if I vote for Trump, but my best friend is voting for Biden, I can, rather than thinking that he's stupid and him thinking that I'm an immoral, racist, sexist, whatever, actually I can refer to Jonathan Haidt's book and God's book, the Bible, and it's telling me actually that we have a slightly different value set, and those value sets are both equally valid and both good for both equally valid and useful to the forwarding of the world. And just as a separate point with regards to the question, I think our job as Christians is to make sure that the most important political place that we are entering into is where we go on a Sunday morning, and that's church, and that is in the original biblical sense of the word political, and we need to be able to put our belief and faith in Christ above our political beliefs, and make sure that we're not activists for the Labour Party or an activist for BLM or an activist for the Conservative Party, and actually we're on earth to forward God's mission first and foremost, and anything behind that is just secondary. And I think we need to also separate ourselves from the overwhelming political discourse at the moment that is one of divisiveness and hatred from both sides, and we need to actually be separate, be inside the chaos but separate to it, and say, no, we're Christians and we're going to talk about these issues in a civilized way, and through that we're actually being an example. And so I think if you're taking all that I've just said into account, you can vote with a good heart, I think, for either candidate, as long as you're presenting putting your Christian faith at the forefront and not those political beliefs. That was a very long answer.
Yeah, but I mean, it's honest, and I think it's going to be helpful to some people listening who will hear that, and I think they'll get there, just how difficult and the process you're going through to make these decisions. You're not just going Trump, because you're like, white people, Trump. You're not doing that, which is what a lot of people in America do. I mean, and then they try to kind of put it into, we care about abortion. I'm like, that's interesting. You care about babies until they're born. And then when they're born, whatever they do, throw them in jail, and like you see massive incarceration issues. So it's just a bit shallow, but I think in that you've explained like the depth, as it were, and the difficulties of making decisions. And so yeah, no, I totally hear you.
How do I follow that? But no, I think you've kind of said it all.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, how do I go to sleep with my sort of voting choices is to really just trust God. And I know it's just a Christianese answer to say, but ultimately, like, trust that, okay, I've made this decision based on what I think is right to do, based on my views and based on my values, and hope that God has led me in that decision as well. But I would just say, just trust God that you've made the right choice, and ultimately His will be done. He's still in control, even though it might seem like the wrong person wins in your eyes. God is still in control, and I can just relax and rest in that.
For me, how do I go to sleep at night with my voting decisions? I think you have to realize that there's only so much you can do. There are going to be trade-offs with either way you vote. If you don't want to make a wasteful vote, there are going to be trade-offs. As long as your faith influences your vote, I think that's the main thing for me.
Right, how do I go to bed at night? Well, I'm normally shattered, so I just fall asleep, if I'm honest with you. I was setting you guys up. You could have just said you'll just go to bed. But you're like, I debate that. I don't know, whatever.
Questions for you.
No. It is, no, I think it is important to think about these things. I'm obviously into politics, working in politics, having in politics for a long, long time. And so the impulse I have sometimes is, as Luke says, is to get way too into the politics. I mean, I'm a policy guy, as it seems like we all are in this room, right? I'm super obsessed with what the policies are. Number one, what are the manifestos? What are they trying to achieve? What achieves the most through a utilitarian perspective? Typically, what achieves the most for the greatest number of people? But sometimes that's a fleshy thing, and I have to recognize that you can build the greatest policy ever, but there's always going to be unintended consequences. There's always going to be government failure. All these kind of different things. Which helps me to do what you're doing, David, what you're saying, which is just to realize that there's only so far your intellect can take you. We were singing a song today, a great hymn about consecration. And one of the, we were singing it after a Bible study we had in the morning. And one of the lines was, take my intellect. Like, God, take my intellect and like use it for your own will, as it were. Because left to my own devices, I will try and lift some people up at the expense of others. And I think if we all recognize that there's that part of us, then we would have more humility from our political leaders. And it's why some of the stuff I've said happens where a white theologian who is ridiculously like deep and great at preaching the Bible just has a massive blind side when it comes to race. And it's why people who are like, I love everybody, right, will affirm people making sinful decisions that actually will destroy their lives. They're like, yeah, but it's just weed, and everyone should have the chance to smoke it. You're like, yeah, but it's going to destroy some people's lives. And they're like, yeah, but freedom first. And you go, come on. So very clearly, our intellect is not enough. So for me, it's just realizing what you just said, which is just letting go and trusting God that after I've done all the research, ultimately, He's going to be the one who's going to make it make sense. Though, I mean, let's not forget the Republican Party ended slavery. At some stage, that party was the Progressive Party, and the Democrats were the. So society just changes all the time. Jeremy Corbyn's great, but tell me how he's going to pay for that broadband, right?
Is he great?
No, he's a nice guy. He's very compassionate, right? But some of his policies, I don't know how they're going to work. And Boris Johnson, whilst he's what he is. I'm just gonna stop. And just say we had a really good discussion.
We could go on.
But I want to just thank you guys because this was just brilliant, and I hope that people can see that it was difficult for us to have this conversation. And I want to thank everyone for just being honest and open and transparent. I want to encourage everyone who's listening. If they haven't done so, I don't know why, because they've had 40 minutes to do so. Subscribe, folks. Like, just click the button, click it. But also share this with someone who you like, someone you don't like,
especially those you don't like.
Yeah, and start having a discussion, man. Start having a discussion. But yeah, in fact, we've done that last week. Is that it? Everyone good?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go.
It's late night. We've done well. Take care, everybody.